Kia ora koutou te whānau, ngā mihi mahana kia koutou. Before I do crack into this, I also would like to thank Vodafone and the Vodafone Foundation. It's not an exaggeration to say that without them I would not actually be standing here this morning. I actually don't know where I would be standing, because Vodafone invested in me and in Ngā Rangatahi tour at a point where I'd given up my educational leadership role in South Auckland to focus on growing Ngā Rangatahi tour. I'd been couch surfing and living off my savings and the kindness of my friends for almost 18 months. I was flat broke, but more than anything, I was starting to get that drift on that you get when you've been driving a project so passionately, but just by yourself for too long. So I was, as Jade said, a Vodafone World of Difference recipient in 2013, and I'm now a proud alumni. Since that time, Vodafone has been more than our funder, they're our partner, so I'd just love to give thanks to the organisation that has shown me and hundreds of other youth workers around the country the real, I guess, the corporate kindness side of things. So thank you very much. Now, one Tuesday, don't want to see my name, that's a crazy name, this is much better. Okay, well, but one Tuesday morning, many years ago, I popped into an alternative education provider in South Auckland to meet with the youth workers who I had in a professional development project I was running, but also to meet with the kids. Now, these are the kids who've been kicked out of 2 or more schools or are on continual suspension when no other school would take them. I popped in that morning with one of my best friends, Josh Paki, who's an artist and tattooist, because the youth worker wanted him to come in and talk about careers days for him, to let the kids know what a career pathway to an artist or tattooist could be. So while I was in my meeting, Josh was in the classroom doing this thing, talking about super cool stuff that kids really want to engage with and how to be an artist and how to be a tattooist. I'm sure he had them wrapped around his little finger. Then one of the youth workers in front of the kids asked me, would I like to go and talk about being a teacher and inspire the kids to being a teacher. Now, don't get me wrong, being a teacher is rad. When it's done right, it is extremely inspirational, but hard on the heels of an artist and tattooist and his extremely cool career, that was going to be a hard sell to a group of alternative education kids in South Auckland on a cold Tuesday morning. Now, I think there's probably in that classroom there are more kids I'd trust as being a teacher than being a tattooist. However, the pathway of finishing year 13, going to university, doing postgrad, that was not going to be speaking to my audience. So, luckily enough, being an excellent teacher, one thing you're good at doing is thinking on your feet. So I chose to speak directly to them. I got up in front of that class and I said, I've fucked up more times than I haven't, but I'm a teacher. Excuse me. I used to be in a place in my life where I spent every single red cent I had on drugs, but now I am a teacher. It's not about being successful, it's about finishing school, about going to uni. Being a teacher is about knowing yourself, owning your shit, and above all, being a learner. Always being a learner and continuously learning from what other people might call your failures. Now that was almost 4 years ago, and my life was still pretty chaotic. I was still managing to distract myself from my true path and my true self with the usual vices, but this was a sliver of consciousness, of truth, authenticity, and vulnerability that I was able to manifest because I was doing my thing. I was teaching, I was educating, I was creatively teaching and educating. And that is my thing, that is what I am here to do, that is when I lose time and when I get into my vibe. I'd already started Ngā Rangatahi tour when I spoke to those kids, but in the last 4 years the organisation has grown and developed as I have grown and developed. So I've moved along the path of professional and personal growth to now knowing that behind these words, what really spoke to those kids was the idea that failure in its doing can be isolating, can seem like forever, can be like, that's how people see me, so that is who I am. But failure in its being can be freedom, can be potential, and how you deal with it can unlock the endless possibilities of life. That failure only exists in doing and has nothing to do with being is one of the understandings that, along with mindfulness and creativity and love, sits at the core of Ngā Rangatahi toa.
Taringa whakarongo! Karite! Karite! Kamo! Ringa ringa pakia! Wai wai takahia! Tena karafua! Ah, kamate! Mate kora! Ah, kamate! Mate kora! Ah, tenete tangata! Uru rana ikiki mai whakawhiti tera! Upane! Upane! Upane kupane whiti tera!
Politics and hypocrites looking down on us. Who to blame, who to shame, we got no one to trust. Got the crime blame monopoly, taking Modi property. Using the keys so they get through what's in poverty. Open the door to the elderly poor. Kia call for another who be giving it all. No stress, stay blessed, protest for the best. And unite as one, become brighter than the sun.
So they're just some of our kids with just some of their mentors completing their creative project filmed in Okahu Bay in response to their new knowledge about the Takaparawa occupation. Their kids have been kicked out of school, who've been arrested some many times over, who've prospected for gangs, who have supported themselves and their families through selling drugs. They are amazing humans, and I love them more than I can put into words for you this morning. At Ngā Rangatahi tour, we find out what it is that is going to engage these kids, then team them up with some of the top creative talent New Zealand has to offer, and find out what they want to do, to explore a creative process and communication, to create an installation, a mural, lay down a track, or even write a screenplay, whatever it is they need to imagine themselves beyond what they've been doing to what is in their being. We make that happen. Now, I could easily speak to you about the doing side of failure, how it can be turned into a success. You know, I've looked at my failures or challenges and learnt from them and built a better arts organisation. How if you go down one creative path and it's not quite what you expected, another creative path opens up. Or how kids excluded from pretty much everything can conceptualise and be part of a video installation and create their way out of chaos. And if it was 2011 and if we were in that classroom in Otara, then that is the talk that you would have got from me. It is all still relevant, it's important, and I will touch on some of it this morning. But what I want to do today, in this moment that we share with every other human being on this planet, in this moment, I want to go beyond doing. I want to go to the level of being. I want to explore with you a place that you saw in that video, where the kids are in their element, doing their thing, being who they are, where failure isn't just not an option, it just does not exist. And conversely, where success is not our goal, because that doesn't exist either. Those old judgmental words are transcended when you move from doing to being. This morning I want to explore with you how we at Ngā Rangatahi toa connect to being, bring out this core of humanity through creativity so that our rangatahi can be who they are. Let's go back for a moment to that alternative education classroom I laid my failures on. In that same class a year earlier was a girl called Kahurangi. She'd been excluded from school and she'd had issues in alternative education too, which is the last real safety net as far as education is concerned for kids. To me, she seemed keen to engage, but there was something stopping her and holding her back. She seemed elusive, almost like she was hiding. But there was something there. There was something in her that resonated with me when we'd chat. So when the Soleil project, which is our visual arts and performance-based one-to-one mentoring project, came up in 2012, and she'd already disappeared from alternative education, I tracked her down to get her involved so I could really connect with what I sensed. And it turns out that Kahurangi is a writer, a poet. She has an undeniable voice. I did not know this when I asked her to be part of Ngā Rangatahi tour, and I doubt she did either, although maybe both of us sensed it. She most certainly had not been connected to as a writer in any classroom, by any of the other interventions or government departments or various services that she'd been involved with. What she had been told was that, what she had been told was that she was ill, that she had a mental illness. Now, while some progress has been made, it is not just in mainstream New Zealand that mental illness is misunderstood and can be somehow marked a person as a failure, to be kept at arm's length. It was hard for Kahu to be in a classroom, to engage and to feel comfortable with others when there was so much going on inside her head. This is why she had failed in the education system, because of the focus on doing rather than attending to her being, in this case, her voice. When we engaged with her, she'd already begun the reclusive journey that so many diagnosed with mental illness find themselves on, sidelined, unable to participate, measured up and found wanting. Being judged in this way has to be as debilitating as any condition or disease diagnosed. With us, Kahurangi is not her diagnosis. She is just amazing, so intuitive, intelligent, honest, and wonderfully, wonderfully caring and loving. She really began to communicate in poetry and lyricism guided by her mentor, Grace Taylor. She wrote beautiful, insightful South Auckland poems and even developed one into a powerful script for a short film that we will make at the beginning of next year. But it was in the January theatre season of Manawa Order, our interarts one-to-one project, that shit got real. The first night, Kahu barely came on stage. Grace performed her words on her behalf. Following the close of this performance, we had a Q&A with the audience that lasted about an hour, and so much love was directed at Kahu for her poetry, her vision, and her authentic voice. The audience did not see a failure or a diagnosis. What they saw was what we saw, what Kahu's creativity had allowed her to be, her being, her essence, her in her zone. From that space, we heard the voice of those so often silenced. The next night, Kahu came right on stage and owned her work with a beautiful smile. After that, she engaged with the audience in the foyer afterwards, her smile a mile wide. By sitting with her creativity at the core of her being, she felt good, she felt well. Within 3 weeks of this, of Manawa Order, with the support of Grace and Ngā Rangatahi tour, she had applied for and been accepted to the diploma level creative writing course at MIT on merit alone, because with so much time out of school, she had had very limited access to NCEA. This is a course tutored by Eleanor Catton, Witi Himaira, and her original Ngā Rangatahi tour mentor, Grace Taylor. To get to this point with our kids is a process of untangling the doing from the being, of undoing the systematic judgmental harm that has been done by only looking at and reacting to the doing, the outward, the external, the success or failure, and not delving into the being, the interior, the connected core that we all share. The way we work works, and it is as simple as being human. It's about going beyond into that creative transformational space to walk with our rangatahi as they journey into adulthood, as they transition into tertiary study, back into mainstream or into employment. The national successful transition rate of alternative education sits at 37%. That is a failure. Our successful transition rate for our rangatahi who have been through our programs is 100%, but that is not a success. That is normal. That's humans like me and you being enabled to be themselves. There are a lot of humans out there like Kahurangi, like Bobby, who have been kicked out of school, excluded pretty much permanently for differing reasons. 3,500 between the ages of 13 and 16 to be exact. There's even more, one step beyond this, where Kahu had found herself before we connected with her. The kids who are kicked out of alternative education or who never actually make it there in the first place. There are 28,800 in the Waineek group between the ages of 15 and 19. And for those of you who did not bring your government jargon handbook, you left on the bedside table as you rushed here this morning, Waineek means youth and no education, employment or training. So this is how our kids come to us, an acronym diagnosed, measured up and found wanting with in a myriad of different ways. Their failures are pointed out to them so clearly that our kids, some as young as 12, begin to identify with and internalise these failures. Even at that young age, they think that's them forever, like that's how people see me, so that's who I am. This identity with failure through simply what they do becomes imprinted on their minds, but that's where we come in, to help them with the disidentification with who they've been told that they are. Our kids are not dropouts, our kids are not criminals, our kids are not their diagnosis. Our kids, they're humans, human beings. This is how we see them. They are as we are. Their failures, their doing is not what defines them, it's not at their core. Just as it's not at my core and it is not at yours. Our projects push beyond the negative thought processes, those layers and layers of doing, what our kids did wrong, what they failed at, what they failed to live up to get to the level of being, affirming who they are is far more important than what they've done or what they've been labelled. At the core of our being, the tie that binds is love, a spacious interconnectedness that links all of us together, and it is there to be called upon. As creatives, plugging into this interconnectedness will be familiar to you. It's that feeling of spaciousness, of creation. It's crack for the creative, that place. That's what we live for. That place you go where you lose time. When people accuse you of being absent or away with the fairies, but in actual fact when you're wholly present, because you've been in your zone creating. Like the great educational reformer, Sir Ken Robinson says, we are all born creative. We just have it bred out of us at school. Everyone in this room has somehow found a way back to their creative vibe, but the place from which everything comes. We understand the transformational power not just of access to art or design or business or whatever it is that it is your creative outlet, but the transformational power of being in this space, of sitting with creativity, that spacious interconnectedness of being in your zone. My intention for you today is to consider that this space we are so blessed to inhabit is in everyone, here at the core of our being, beyond doing, where failure and success are just words. This space of interconnectedness where creativity stems from is powerfully healing. It rejuvenates. And we need to think not in terms of gatekeeping, but in terms of open source. As creatives, it is our mandate to speak to that place in others, no matter what they've done or what you've done. To me, this is the true power of creativity, and I urge you to truly embrace yours, that is ours, that is theirs.
I hear whispers. I find a thrill in watching cars go by fast. I throw the whispers, place them as passengers into the fastest car, to be taken to a place far away. I can't imagine where they'll go. I feel anxious sometimes. It gets to me like talking stickers, reminding me of words like, I can't. They keep me trapped, feeling like I'm weak, out of control, making me someone I'm not. They have me hustling for peace in my mind. I feel trapped, colors dominating circles around me, shaking me around, speaking in lower frequencies that only I can hear. They tell me I have to be this, be that, making me feel like the other. Dirt kicks tell a lot of freedom, freedom that I don't have to pay for. Storms have me falling in love over the comfort of marinated chicken. Sitting under the graffiti Jesus, I catch the smell of Mom's perfume. It makes me feel close. I see Jesus. I see him or her there for me. No more make-believe. I surrender ciggies, alcohol, and weed for cup of tea weapons. My blood is like a secret awa, needed by my mountain heart.
Thank you.